Bizarre Brain Comics. Oh. Greetings. The Dark Librarian is here once again to tell tales of terror. But this time, here on Bizarre Brain Comics, we're not talking about horror comics with horror hosts. No, this time, your librarian is here to speak of other things that are still spooky. Even the Dark Librarian enjoys his tea. Ha ha. This time, instead of looking at just a single book, I'm going to be looking at these titles here. This title, and it's still considered kind of spooky, which is Gold Keys, UFOs, Flying Saucers. Stories which tell of strange visitors from outer space plying our skyways and landing and terrifying poor mortals. Let's see what knowledge can be gleaned from the big book of knowledge. UFOs, Flying Saucers. It's a Gold Key Comics title. It started in 1968, initially ran for 13 issues until 1977. Then the title was changed to Ufo Outer Space, UFO in Outer Space, in 1978, running from 1978 to 1980 for an additional 12 issues. These books adapted real UFO reports of encounters to the comic format. They also featured the character, the Hoax Master, who talked about established UFO hoaxes. These are published mostly without credits, and I've been unable to establish who the writers were for these books. However, one issue credited Pat Fortunato as the writer, but whether she wrote for this title on a larger scale is unknown. She is a freelance writer and editor and publisher with many titles of comics and prose to her credit. And the primary artists for this series seems to be Frank Bowle, and I hope I pronounced that right. Could be Bolle. And I talked about him in more depth in the Condor Man episode. And he was a capable cartoonist with a long and distinguished career in comic books of varying genres, comic strips, and magazine illustration. He did a lot of work for Gold Key Comics and was very good at drawing normal people as opposed to the exaggerated, heroic figures of the superhero comics. Other artists contributed to this title, most notably Jack Sparling. And Frank Bolle. He was a consummate artist, very slick, very professional, and he drew illustrations for magazines, primarily comic strip formats, illustrations for magazines such as Boy's Life and for advertising. A lot of those ads were ads that we saw in the comics. So, you like aliens? You like UFOs? Even if you don't believe in them, they're cool stuff. So let's take a look at UFO Flying Saucers from Gold Key Comics. Watch out for the aliens! Woo! UFO Flying Saucers. These are some of the covers here. These, as was common for Gold Key Comics, had these wonderful cover paintings. This, I focus primarily on this one because I like this one the best, this particular one. This book here, for example, Ufo Mysteries, is from 1978, and it reprinted stories and features from earlier issues. And of course, this one here is Ufo Outer Spaces after the title change. Continued with the same numbering system, and these were all from the 70s, but would occasionally reprint some stories, especially here from the earlier issues. So I really like that cover painting. I don't know who did the paintings. And I like this here, is Target Earthlings. As I said, Frank Bowle was the primary artist throughout this series, at least what I have seen. When I see some of the ads, I see other familiar covers, which I believe I have had before, and I may still have, but these are the ones that I had readily available. And also, as I said, these had were all this time during the 70s. UFO books became very popular, and I read a lot of them. I was really interested in, and I'm not just talking about the comic books. Regular books recounting encounters and sightings and the like, which were so most of the main stories featured in these were familiar to me because I had read them, and the writers obviously they just read those UFO books and adapted some of the incidents for the comics, which is fine. Sometimes in very creative and inventive ways, such as this one right here, Target Earthlings. It, without giving much detail, it does recount an individual encounter. I should say supposed encounter, because they're all questionable. Although for the most part, I believe the people reporting them truly believed that this is what they saw, but may have been exaggerated through the telling, through their own imagination, misidentifications, and the like. But here, like in this, for example, in this story, it is kind of reversed, where it's recounting this. Briefly recounting a story of an encounter. Here they just talk about some of the various descriptions of alien beings that have been seen, and then saying, what if they're here, and they're just, and maybe they're just curious about us as much as we are about them. So we see it from the UFO-nauts perspective, coming in for a landing, preparing their equipment to take a survey or whatever. Meanwhile, here's this human going out hunting with his dog, and how they had an accidental encounter. Because it does, without giving the name of this person, it does describe what happened on a particular incident. This fellow seems really nicely drawn, real nice backgrounds here. Nice detail on the hunting rifle. How the fellow and his dog, he took a shot at what he thought was an animal that he was hunting for, and it wasn't. And then he sees, this is really good effect. Seeing the reflection of the alien in an extreme close-up of the man's eye. So you see what he's seeing in his own eyes. And this bizarre alien who comes out of the brush. Oh, he screams. It kind of reminds me of from E.T. when Elliot and E.T. first made contact. They both scream and run from each other. That's what happened. They take off, and he goes for help while they continue their survey, and then take off while the man who had the encounter goes to the police, and they send him to the doc, who said they think he's nuts. He just decides to leave his rifle behind and goes home. And here we have something of the Hoax Master. Do you believe in flying saucers? And he talks about some of the misidentifications, such as sundogs and bright planets and meteors and the like. How about this one? Is that a UFO up there? No, it just happens to be an MFO, a misidentified flying object. Birds flying in formation, and when the light hits their wings at a certain fashion, they can really flash. So it looks like something solid flashing the lights. This one here is from Jack Sparling. Here is a story of the Virginia Giant, because this is a pretty good representation of this particular incident that I remember, and a good depiction of the alien, which is very similar to what I have seen before. Some people out camping, and like boy with his dog. The dog senses something, and they go off while everyone else is out looking for more firewood or something. And he sees this thing landing, and this giant alien being comes out of it, and the dog is somewhat aggressive and protective of the boy. But the alien does nothing, and he goes back into his ship and takes off. Meanwhile, some other people in a car, they see in the same area, have a similar sighting, and these others, the car conks out and then starts up again, and they get home and see the thing flying away. It's about an escaped prisoner. Breaks out of prison, and he's on the run, and he sees something weird, and he goes back. He gives himself up, goes back to the police because he doesn't want to deal with it. And just some descriptions of some of that reported different aliens. Here's the giant that we just saw, some conventional looking humans in spacey looking suits, some small furry beings to robot, to globs, to the those who are, here we have those that are tall and slender with long blonde hair, or often referred to as the Nordics, down all the way to the possibility of the abominable snowman. All kinds of things. Some nice artwork. Good. Frank Bowle. He was a wonderful artist. While not extremely dynamic, he was very strong in his storytelling, and for him it seemed to be more the story than the visual impact. And part of that may have been even the good crashing aircraft there, but it's less dynamic than it could have been, and I think part of that is also just being the house style. Very slick, very professional. Here, this lady sees a UFO crashing and some people coming out. They almost get her. They take off. They're afraid of her. She wasn't them. And then there's talking about science and other worlds and the like. Do they have a fascination with automobiles? Because they seem to in many places chase cars. You name it. And the Hoax Master. This one is one about some rock band who the musician who claimed to have been. I wonder if this might have been David Bowie. I don't know. Claimed to have been had an encounter with alien beings who communicated through music, and he adapted their music for his music style, stuff like that. A story that could be true. Here's another. This is another famous one here, the Mississippi Mystery. And these guys who were out fishing, and Pascagoula, I think, and one of the guys was taken while the other one had passed out. So they were both taken inside the ship and examined, and typical UFO stuff, and returned. But and people not wanting to believe them, but they can vouch for the sincerity of these particular individuals. That's a very famous one from the 70s. They do not. At any time have I ever seen any of these recount the Roswell crash, because that was not that well known until the early 80s. I remember when I went to see the movie Hangar 18, which took place in modern times, but it was based on the story of the alien crash at Roswell from 1947. And I was surprised because it said based on the true story, and I still enjoyed the movie, right? I still enjoyed the movie. It was just a low-budget movie. But my stepmother, who was from Texas and lived at various times in both Texas and New Mexico, she said, oh, that must be, she told me the story then. I'm surprised about that. I haven't heard anything about it. And it was only after that, when some of the books came out and the research, about that time, when the story of the Roswell, 1947 Roswell crash became so well known. When in all the UFO books that I had read, I didn't recall ever seeing that mentioned. That's not to say it was made up then. That's to say that the story was not well known then. That's when some writers, all of a sudden I can't think of their names, come out with a book where they did deeper research. They heard about it and did deeper research into it, and then it gradually grew. The story grew until today. It's a mainstay of the UFO field, and even has the of course has spawned 2 TV series based on it, Roswell and Roswell, New Mexico, and of course the series of novels that those books were based on, as well as the real UFO museum in Roswell, which I've been to, and was a lot of fun. And I guess a couple years ago, I had in the news story of someone breaking in and stealing and damaging the part of the UFO and alien recreation, which was an animatronic thing, very big, very cool. I saw that, and I've got a video on it. And if I haven't already, I intend to post it here. It's only a few seconds long. Post that video just so you can get a look at it. Okay, and that's all I've got on UFO flying saucers. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed seeing this little bit of comic book UFO history. Please like and share with other comic book friends or people who are interested in UFOs and that sort. Thank you for joining me. And remember, comics are art. And watch the skies. Remember, always watch the skies.